Morena, welcome to the second Optimise webinar in a series of 6. For those of you who haven't heard my dulcet tones before, I'm Helen Bartle. I'm the Senior Advisor for Audience Development at Creative New Zealand. And today's topic is being strategic about social media. This, of course, will be presented by Vicky Allpress-Hill of the Audience Connection. The webinar takes about an hour, and today we're going to actually break after 20 minutes to give everyone time to ask a few questions, about 5 minutes worth of questions, so that you don't have to wait until the end. You're probably aware that you're currently muted. This is to avoid any background noise so that we can keep the line clear. If you click on View All Attendees, which is underneath the panelists list at the top, and next to your name, if there isn't actually a cross which indicates you're muted, you can mute yourself by clicking the mute button, if you can see it, in the top right-hand corner, and it should be next to your name. So any problems actually muting yourself, just send us a message. There are several ways in which you can ask questions today. For those of you that aren't familiar with WebEx, you can either raise your hand, and there's a little hand icon just above the chat box, or you can actually write that you'd like to ask a question in the chat box, or indeed in the Q&A box, which is the bottom box. Just make sure that you send it to all participants so everyone can see you'd like to ask a question, and obviously importantly that Vicky can see that you're keen to say something. You don't necessarily have to type in what your question is. You can just say that you have one. Makes it easier. And also, just to let you know, we'll post the PowerPoint after the session, so don't worry too much about taking copious notes. We're going to publish this webinar as a recording on Creative New Zealand's website, so you can also listen again. I think that's all the housekeeping for today. I'm really looking forward to this topic. I know everyone, it's pretty much a hot topic, but and it's kind of, you know, been a buzz area for a while now, but actually how we're strategic about social media is different to obviously just setting up a social media page, or, you know, being involved or having a conversation. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Vicky, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Helen, and welcome everyone. It's fantastic to have a lot of you back again for the second webinar, and a few new people as well. So why did we feel that this was an important topic for a webinar? As Helen has just said, it's setting up a Facebook page versus thinking of a social media strategy is quite a different thing. Some of the most common issues I come across when I'm working with arts organisations include posting on social media with very little idea as to why and to whom, not knowing which social media channels to focus on. I'm often asked which ones should we worry about, which ones should we use. A very common one is the lack of content to keep the channels alive. So a lot of organisations have problems having things to talk about on social media and things to post. There are a lot of concerns about the tone of voice, and often there's a lack of internal resource to keep social media channels up to date. Someone out there is not on mute, and there's quite a bit of background noise, so if you could all please check that you are indeed muted, that would be helpful. Thank you. We all know what strategy is, but just to clarify, it's defined as an elaborate and systematic plan of action designed to achieve a particular goal. So the important words I think there are systematic, it's a plan of action, and it's designed to achieve a goal. So by social media strategy, I mean going back to the core of what you are aiming to achieve and who you are attempting to persuade to do what. Defining your priorities over which time period, and setting the appropriate processes and resources in place to ensure that all your daily social media activity comes out of that. Whether you're fairly far down the track in using social media or whether you're still at the early stages, strategic work is still an important investment, especially given the fast-moving nature of social media. The time taken to do this will ensure that you protect your brand. I think that's an important thing. That you apply resource cost effectively, that you achieve greater return on investment. So you're putting a lot into social media, even if it's not cash that you're putting in staff resource and time, and it will give you a roadmap that will make your annual activity more manageable. So this webinar is, I'm going to share with you in this webinar things that I have learned working with organisations on social media strategy, what has worked, what hasn't, a few tools and tips. And it's about how you approach your social media activity overall as an arts organisation. It's not necessarily about the nitty-gritty of how you do every single element of social media. I'm going to have to pause, I'm sorry. Can everyone check that they are on mute? We do have a bit of background noise, so my apologies for that noise. We'll try and get to the source of it. So if you think that noise is coming from you, please, if I could ask you to mute. Thank you.
Vicky, shall I just remind people how they mute themselves?
That would be helpful, thank you.
If you see the mute icon, it's in the top right-hand corner of your screen, just under the Q&A tab, and it should be next to your name. If you click on that once, it should say mute on.
And I don't know if maybe Sabrina can see who may not be muted, perhaps.
Yeah, she's
that would be great. So apologies everyone, we'll just keep moving through. So today we're going to talk about, I'm dividing this into two sections. So the first is looking at how you set your goals and which platforms and channels you should use and how you should set up your channels, and about integrating between the channels. And the second section is probably some of the drier stuff, but the very important stuff, which is around how you allocate resources, what sort of processes you need to put in place, what you should be tracking, and how you produce the documentation. And we'll end on with some next steps for you to get started. So in terms of setting your goals and priorities, this is often a big question. How do we know what to focus on in social media? So the first thing I would say to you is it really is about going back to your organisational goals. So where can social media play a role, and how will it feed into what you are trying to achieve? So very commonly I see social media channels, and by channels I mean your Facebook page, your Twitter feed, your YouTube channel, etc., that have been set up in isolation, perhaps by an enthusiastic junior staff member who's not had a lot of support or buy-in from the executive team, or it may have been set up in haste with a sense of urgency that we must have a page, for example. On the other hand, don't panic if you have done that, because often we can be paralysed by too much planning, and sometimes you need to actually get the channels up and running and try them out before you find out what works. So it's not the end of the world if you're out there sort of fumbling around. You can come back and reassess. And I'm talking about organisational goals, not just marketing goals, because there's a number of things social media can achieve for your organisation that aren't just limited to marketing. The second thing is to think about who your target audiences are and how they're using social media. So this might come from a bit of desk research, looking at the social media channels, Googling demographics for Facebook, demographics for Twitter, those sorts of things, and having a look at how they match up with your target audiences. And then the other thing is actually going and asking your customers through research and feedback opportunities, how they are actually using social media. And that's going to have quite a bearing on where you place your priorities. It's also important to look at the resources that you have available to you. So you may want to suddenly go live with 8 different social media channels, but if you don't have the resource to manage those and maintain those, there's no point in doing that. So that may determine what you focus on first, as well as the above areas. I read a great little phrase, which is, what is the metric you are trying to influence by jumping into social media? So that's going back again to your organisational goals. So what do you really want to change with your social media activity? And the other thing to think about is where are you in the digital marketing life cycle? And that's kind of a fancy way of saying, are you just getting started? Have you already achieved some engagement and some traction? Or are you really, really well down the track and you're into going viral and the more advanced phases? So that also will determine what you focus on and what your goals are. In terms of social media goals, social media can achieve a number of things, so it's going to be very specific to your situation and your organisation as to what you use social media for. This diagram is showing you that this is all the probably the most common things that social media goals might be. So I'll just quickly take you through these. We've got web traffic. Social media is a great driver of traffic to your website. That's going to be most important to you if perhaps you have a collection on your website or you are selling things, doing e-commerce on your website, and you want to get people there so that you can convert them or engage them. Awareness. Social media is great for awareness, either of your organisation or an event or whatever it is your offering is. Building community. Obviously, it's a place where you can build a sense of community and a sense of belonging and loyalty, and sort of tapping into that community aspect, particularly with social media sites like Facebook. Information sharing, so perhaps you don't have much of an information sharing platform over the web, or you want to be able to get information out to your audiences more quickly. It's a great thing for that. Engagement, so once you've built your community, actually getting a sense of engagement and dialogue going on between you and them, and also between peer-to-peer engagement as well. Ticket sales and memberships, well, yes, that is a goal of social media ultimately, but you may find that social media communities don't necessarily immediately convert to ticket sales. It's not necessarily what it's about. It's about building community loyalty and awareness over time and building that relationship that will eventually encourage people to give you a try. However, in saying that, I've seen social media sites, particularly Facebook, convert directly to ticket sales on many occasions as well. Customer satisfaction, a lot of organisations are now using social media, often Twitter, to be kind of a customer service site and deliver customer service. And audience insights, it's a fantastic way to find out more about who your audience actually is. You've got a one-to-one kind of direct relationship with them. You can really get a sense from the analytics now who's on social media and who's interested in following you and what they're saying about you. So you're going to set your goals based on, there's going to be others as well that might be relevant to you, but on the whole, these are the most common ones. So your overall goals will be picked from these areas. A couple of examples here. I managed the social media activity for the Real New Zealand Festival last year, and one of our goals was within a very, very short time period of when we set up the social media channels was to build a fairly strong community that we could then deliver information to when the festival happened. Because we couldn't produce a print brochure for over 1,000 events, all of our information was digital. And so it was really important to use the Facebook channel to deliver information about events, but also to drive traffic to the website where people could find out more about events. And as you'll see, we did pretty well in a short time period of a few months to get those numbers. Another example here is the Tate Galleries online in the UK. These are the actual, on the diagonal here, these are the actual, well, I've got a pointer, by the way, which I'm going to try. There we go. These are the actual goals that they have for social media, and so they want to engage audiences, promote their program, and distribute Tate content to a wider audience. And you can actually see from their social media activity, if you go and have a look at it, how they're actually doing that. So here's an example of a post where they're promoting something that's on at the Tate Modern, but they're using a really interesting image, and imagery is a great way to get engagement. People are very attracted by imagery and more likely to sort of click a like, and then of course that's creating a story on their own news feed. So you can see how they're using imagery there to do that engagement and distributing some of their content to their wider audience. So that's a little bit about how you start to set priorities and choose your, the next bit now is about how you choose your platform. So prior to that, I've talked about goals and priorities. And the next thing is how you actually select from the many, many social media platforms. And by platform, I mean something like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and so they go on. How you might select from them all to choose which ones you're going to prioritize. So the first thing is to consider each channel's match to your overall goals. So you've just gone through a goal-setting process. Now you want to think about, which of the channels are going to most help me, for example, deliver information or drive people to attend events or ticket sales or drive traffic to my website. And that's a matter of going through the information available to us online about the different platforms and what their demographics and uses are. So, for example, just looking at the latest demographic stats that have come out from the US about some of the main platforms, we're finding that Facebook is getting quite a lot older now, so 46% of Facebook users are over 45. And it's quite a highly engaged medium because people spend on average 23 minutes per visit, can you believe? Twitter is 59% female and also quite a bit older, so we've got 33% are aged 45 plus and 25% are 33 to 44. And it's a very highly mobile platform, so 54% are using mobile phones. LinkedIn's your professional network, so you've got a mix of male and female, almost equal, and 3/4 use it for business purposes. And 50% have a bachelor or graduate degree. And Pinterest, this latest platform, which is kind of an online scrapbooking or pin board site where people can just pin up images that they've found online and they really like, and they can do it in albums and categories. This has the heaviest gender imbalance. It's 82% women. It's the fastest growing social media network now. And it's very targeted at people, or being used by people who are interested in things like interior design and fashion design. And then Google Plus, the other new network, is very focused on young males who tend to be developers, geeks, designers, working in the web. They're early adopters, 71% male. So you can kind of start to see when you go and Google search on demographics of social media channels, how they each differ and what they each specialise in and who they're targeting. It's also important to think about what you can manage within your accessible resources. So again, I mentioned earlier on that you might want to do all of them, but you're not going to be able to manage all of the channels. So it's about selecting which is the best for your goals and target audiences. The other thing is thinking about how you wish to be positioned. So sometimes people say, well, should I be on Google+? If you're an organisation that wants to be seen as an early adopter and you're an innovator and your art form is quite edgy, then perhaps you want to give it a try and be seen to be on Google+ because it's important to be seen to be on there early. Also, you want to think about, okay, what are my competitors doing, or what are other organisations in my genre doing? Because if they're all on Twitter and I'm not, maybe I'm going to be missing out on a few opportunities. So again, these are all specific factors to your own organisation. And the other thing is to plan a phased approach so you can manage it effectively. So if you haven't started at all, which I'm sure there's none of you on there who haven't started at all, but gradually bring in one platform at a time and one channel at a time and get that working, and then just sort of add to your activity as your knowledge grows. So the phased approach can really help you. This is just a little table that you can refer to a little later on when you're looking back over the PowerPoint, but it's just some of the things that each of the channels are good for. So I talked about the demographics of the channels, but they're also each appropriate for different things. So Facebook has huge scope for creativity. It's such a, there's so many different types of posts that you can put up on Facebook, and the new timeline has added sort of new functionality. It's the best for conversation because you can see the full conversation between everyone. It's great for audience engagement, and it's a real storytelling medium. So whether it's you telling your stories or your audience is sharing their stories, Facebook's great for that. Twitter is great for immediacy, connecting with influencers, connecting with media and journalists, and gaining reach. So if you've got an influential person following you who happens to retweet you, you can suddenly find yourself reaching, tens of thousands of people with that one tweet. YouTube is often used for video hosting primarily for that, and then that video is then pulled through to the other channels, but it's also a fantastic way to reach new audiences, being the second largest search engine on the web. And particularly if you're going for a global audience, if your art form can go all over the world and doesn't require a local audience. And, again, good for engagement, breaking down barriers. We talked at the last webinar about the audience journey, so YouTube video can be fantastic at different parts of the journey. And again, for storytelling. And a lot of the corporates are now using video to tell stories, to connect in a more human way with their customers as well, and we have plenty of opportunity for that. Blogs are fabulous for positioning you as an expert in your field, for gaining new search engine rankings with each post, and for those who want to engage deeper with your art form. You can put a lot of information in a blog, get into quite a lot of detail. Pinterest that I've just talked about, yeah, it's the latest thing, but it is to watch. It is great for getting users to post their own content and share their own content. It's good for brand exposure. It's a fantastic visual medium, so if you're a dance company or an art gallery, Pinterest is going to be of extreme interest to you. And it's a great way to also drive traffic to your website, because each pin that people pin up can have a link to your site. And then you've got LinkedIn, which is ideal for your company branding, particularly sponsorship and development opportunities, and finding professional contacts. So that's just a quick overview, but you can see how you can start to match the channel or the platform to what you're trying to achieve and who you're trying to reach. This is just an example. Belvoir Theatre in Sydney, who are quite out there and edgy, have got quite quickly onto Pinterest, and that really suits their brand, and also the visual medium, as you can see, really suits them. Just an example, this is Fortune Theatre, who've brought their ticketing, integrated their ticketing into Facebook, so you can book a ticket while you're in the Facebook platform. That's just indicating and showing you just how many things you can do with Facebook, with the development of applications and things that you can pull through. Facebook's incredibly flexible. So once you've chosen the platforms that you're going to use, how do you actually develop your social media channels? And I have a process that I use where I go very thoroughly through each channel and look at a number of elements. So if I decided with all the earlier stuff that I wanted to, that it was really important for me perhaps to start with Facebook, Twitter and YouTube, which are the three biggies, by the way, and the three that, are going to give you the most value. I would take each channel, so I'd take each platform. I'd say Facebook, am I going to have just one channel, or am I going to have a couple because I have a particular area of activity, perhaps it's youth activity, that could really benefit from having a separate channel? And take each channel and start with some really smart objectives, so the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-bound objectives and targets for that channel. So I might start with Facebook and say, okay, my objectives are around how many likes I want, so an acquisition target. I may have an engagement target where I might go into the insight analytics that you can get now from Facebook and say I want to have a certain number of people talking about this, or the percentage of engagement. I might also have a content objective, or maybe a kind of a target for how often I'm going to post or how much content I'm going to post, that type of thing. Then I would look at the target audiences that I have overall that I'm trying to reach through my wider activity and say which of those target audiences are going to be best served through Facebook that I'm going to focus on. Then I would define the channel's purpose. So what am I primarily going to use this channel for? So an example might be that I am really going to use Facebook to build a community, as I mentioned before, that example, build a community so that I can deliver information digitally to them. Or my target might be I really want to get conversation and dialogue going and get people feeling that they're seeing more behind the scenes. Then the next thing to look at is your tone of voice. And so, okay, on our Facebook channel, we might decide that we're going to be very friendly and welcoming, or we might decide that we're going to be quite cheeky and out there, a little bit bold. That's going to depend completely on your organisation and completely what you want to use each of your channels for. So you might decide that on LinkedIn you're going to be highly professional and corporate, but on Facebook you're going to be cheeky and fun because of the target audiences. And from there you can start to think about the types of content that you would deliver through that channel. We'll come to that a little bit later on. At that point, that is when I would decide which tactics or to-dos I would use to achieve my objectives. So my tactic might be, one of them might be that I find 10 key Twitter feeds who are really influential in my sector and really work on engaging with them on Twitter. So that might be one of my tactics. Another tactic might be that I'm going to run a Facebook advertising campaign in order to build my likes over the next 2 months. So it might be also that I'm going to run a little voucher system on Facebook where everyone who uses this app gets a voucher. So it might just be simply that one of my tactics is that I'm going to make sure that we have one post from one of our key artists every week. They don't have to be dramatic tactics, but the point is here that by the time you get to the point of deciding what you're actually going to do on those channels, you've already gone through a process of knowing who you're talking to and why. And then at the end, it's really important with that one channel to think about how you'll measure the outcomes, so how you'll look at those SMART objectives and know that you achieve them. And that's a matter of thinking, which reports that I have access to will I use to measure this? How will I know that it's actually been achieved? And I would go through that process with each individual channel. It also doesn't matter if you're already partway down the track. You've been doing this for 3 years. It's a really good process to go back over each channel and review this if you haven't done it already. And so it doesn't matter whether you're now adapting to the new Facebook timeline, you want to rethink your whole Facebook page, or like the New Zealand dance company, you've just set up your Twitter feed, so you're just starting out, or you've just, only just joined Facebook, or like the Sydney Opera House, you are way down the track, very advanced in what you're doing, and you're experimenting with some of the new channels like Google+. It doesn't matter where you are, this process is useful. And the last thing just to make in this first section, just to make a point to you about, is that integrating your digital channels is very important. So don't think about your channels in isolation. Think of each of them as part of a digital whole, and also think of your website and your email marketing and your search marketing and everything else you do online as part of the whole. What I mean by this is that you don't just have a channel like a Facebook page that doesn't talk about or direct people to your other channels. What you want to do is deepen community and engagement by encouraging people to traverse between the channels and by using your content in different ways across the channels, because each of your channels is a doorway to a different segment. So I always think about that. I talked to you about the demographics earlier, and each channel has slightly different demographics and slightly different motivations for people belonging to that network. Therefore, you're going to reach different types of people through each one. And so, for example, if you want to build your email list, you want to have more people of a certain type on your email list, and you're going to potentially reach those people through LinkedIn, you can promote your email sign-up through LinkedIn. And each channel has a role to play at different key touch points in your audience journey. So for those of you who are on last month's webinar, you'll remember that we talked about the audience journey from the decision-making point right through to attending and post-attendance. And so you also need to think about your channels in that regard. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick sip of water because I'm getting a dry throat. Hang on a second. Right. So, you're also thinking about that as you're putting content onto your channels. So to think of every opportunity to cross-promote, and here's some examples of what I mean. It's maybe as simply as making sure your sign-up icons for your social media channels are in a prominent place on your website, as Chamber New Zealand have done here. That's really important. It may be integrating your other channels into your Facebook timeline using the custom thumbnails here. Or you can do things like using this Facebook plugins in your website. So here I can add a comment onto the Walker Art Centre's, the Walker Art Gallery's website and share that comment with all my friends. And there's all the share plugins that you've seen for websites. And then you can do things like you can pull your blog in to your Facebook page. You can also do this with your Twitter feed. And you can also pull your Twitter feed into your blog if you're using something like WordPress. So it's just thinking about how you can promote all of the channels on each of your channels. So at this point I'm going to pause and just answer any questions about this first section before we go into the next section. So Sabrina, are you able to help me with this?
Vicky, it's Helen here. So we've got a few questions in the Q&A box. I don't know if you can see those, but Tanya Short would like to know who could advise her on developing a strategy. And I mean, the answer from my point of view is you could talk to me or you could talk to Vicky and drop us. Feel free to drop us a line to arrange a time to do that. The other thing to mention is that we have Stuart Buchanan coming over from Sydney to talk about digital strategy, developing digital strategy, and he will be one of our featured presenters at this year's 21st Century Arts Conference. So if you can get along to that, that would probably also be of use to you. Do you have anything else to add to Tanya's? I mean, Tanya, if you're keen to unmute yourself and elaborate at all, then feel free to, but only if you want to. So can you see those questions, Vicky?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, Tanya. No, I think Helen's advice is great, and Stuart is absolutely fantastic. So you'll get a lot from his session, and also, you know, as we go through this session, you'll see a little bit more about the strategy document that you would want to create. So hopefully that can also give you a guide. I see we have a question from Makavita.
Yeah, now Makavita's gone. She's gone for a meeting. She's actually Senior Advisor for Pacific Arts at Creative New Zealand, for those of you that don't know. So she, and we have a Pacific Arts Facebook page, Creative New Zealand, that she's very heavily involved in and posts to quite regularly. So her comment about where does advocacy fit in your diagram was way back at the beginning, where you're obviously talking about the different touch points really, and how social media can engage with audiences in different ways, you know,
yeah,
so
and
for
definitely
different purposes.
Advocacy is a really good goal for social media as well. So in terms of, you know, developing advocates and making them feel part of you and empowered, you know, you might use a Facebook group for that, or, you know, there's various ways that you can do that through social media. And her question about likes and talking about this, likes is just simply the numbers of people who have liked you, but the talking about this is the number of unique people who have developed a story from your content. So that might mean that they've liked a post, they've commented on a post, they've shared a post or shared a photo or responded to an event. So that's what that talking about this represents when you see that number. So clearly it's an engagement measure.
Does anyone else have a question at this stage? You feel free to just say you've got a question, and then we can unmute you.
We will have another question session at the end too.
Yeah. If not, we'll probably crack on. As I know,
I have to apologise for my dry throat, everyone. I've had that thing that's gone around that stays in your throat for weeks on end. So
I think we do have a question apparently from Aaron. Oh, Anna Herman. So we're going to unmute you, Anna, so you can speak, hopefully. Anna, can you hear us?
Yes, thanks,
hi,
Helen.
hi.
Yes, Anna, not Aaron. cool listening to you, Vicky, on this.
Hi, Anna.
Is there a clever way how you can cross-populate content? Because I'm just looking at all these 6, 7 options or more where you feel like you're duplicating a lot of your information while you're targeting it for your segments, possibly, but there's like photographs, videos, content that you feel like you have to put on five of the channels?
Mm. Well, I'm a real advocate for tailoring the content for each of the channels and not doing any sort of automated process whereby, for example, your Facebook posts turn up on your Twitter feed or vice versa. It doesn't work because the way people engage with the different platforms is completely individual. So, you know, and it is known that a lot of Twitter people don't like Facebook, you know, so they're not interested in reading something that's come off Facebook. So I don't think there's any way around it except I actually find it really useful if I've got one image, for example, that I can use it on different platforms in slightly different ways. Generally, I find there's not too much crossover between the audiences on the platforms, so I think, you know, it gives you the opportunity to actually have more to talk about on each of them, and it also enables you to streamline it a bit better. So if you've produced a video, you put it up on YouTube, you can quickly put a link to it on Facebook and express it in a certain way, and then you can put a tweet up on Twitter. You know, you can embed it in your website, you can embed it in your email. So I actually find that a positive thing because it enables you to reuse that content in a number of different ways. So I don't think there's any easy way of doing it because if you start automating, it starts, you know, destroying the value of it.
No, I understand. What about the question that sort of comes up quite often is, do you still really need a website if you can actually segment your content for different people?
It's going to depend. I mean, you could potentially get away with not having a website. The website tends to be a great kind of landing platform, a place where you can put a lot of richer content. It's a great place for converting people into ticket sales, into membership sign-ups. It's a place where you kind of conduct the conversion. So it's a little bit difficult, I think, if you don't have a website to kind of achieve all those things.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of FMCG companies just plonk their product on Facebook, make the site look really attractive, and not even have a website. Or the web address, you know, is a link that goes to their Facebook page rather than a content-rich website. I
mean, if you're starting up some sort of new event or company or organisation, I think, you know, you could get away with not having a website, potentially. But I think there's a lot of work that your website can do for you in terms of audience engagement and conversion. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Anna. I see that Ken Travella has a question.
He has a question about benchmarking. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to say to you that the ratios are completely different, really, depending on the scenario and the sector. And if I could just say to you that one of the reasons we're doing the Optimizer benchmarking project is so that we can actually really start to see what is a good ratio of these sort of things. So I'd be a little loath to say what is a good ratio at this point because I think we're still exploring that. Shall we carry on, Helen, at this point?
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll take some more questions at the end if we've got time.
Yeah, we'll have some time for questions at the end. The other thing, I'll just say to Ken, the other thing that I tend to do when I'm looking at ratios and benchmarks is you can Google search, you know, that type of thing. But what you'll tend to get is benchmarks from other sectors or, you know, sort of American benchmarks that aren't really relevant to us. So, you know, but you can kind of get some numbers from there. Okay, so then we get to the stuff about how you're actually going to manage all this, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your resources. The first thing to think about is your staff time, how much time, what skills are needed, and should you go in-house or outsourced. Again, it's going to depend a lot on the decisions you've made earlier in the strategy development, but generally you're going to need someone to coordinate and own this, and then a mini team of enthusiasts who are confident about what they're doing, clear on the plan, and feel enabled, which is really important. And just keep in mind that social media is not just about marketing, it's other organisational goals as well, so you may want to create a little in-house group who are part of social media and who involve representatives from all the departments who are involved. But you still need someone who's going to manage this. How much time they spend on this is going to be so dependent on how many channels you're trying to manage, what stage you are in your digital strategy, how many events you have on, all those things. So it's a little difficult to give you an exact figure. But ideally you want those great people who don't necessarily have a 9-to-5 mindset, that it's kind of organic to them to be using social media, so they're happy to keep things going out of hours. At the same time, you've got to be careful that you don't burn people out and expect them to be on social media 24/7 when they're trying to do other jobs as well. In terms of a skill set, they don't have to be young. They have to be professional, curious, discreet, savvy. They need to be good at writing. They need to know who's who out there, to be audience focused, and they need to be tech savvy enough to be comfortable with mobile platforms, know how to upload video, that type of thing, and responsive. So they kind of have that sense of urgency that you need to respond quite quickly. And generally we can find those people on our team who have a real passion for social media, and they're the ones to harness. If you are doing a very intensive event, particularly like a festival, it's very important to think of a rostering system so that people aren't burnt out and people get a chance to have a break from it all. I know the Rugby World Cup did that very cleverly. They had 4 people on social media and during the actual tournament, and they rostered them so that each person got a good 2-day break every 6 days or so, and that kept everyone fresh. In terms of technology, the main technology you might want to acquire is software that helps streamline your activity. So social dashboards, a couple of examples of those are Hootsuite and Sprout Social, both of which, if you use the professional versions, are going to cost you from about $6 to $10 per month, but they enable you to manage all your social media channels across all of them in one place. They also enable you to pre-schedule content, so they're a great way to kind of enable you to focus and streamline your activity. So you might want to invest in those, and then the other things that I would say to invest in is mobile phones, iPhones for those who are doing the social media, because it's going to make it so much easier for them to do it kind of on the trot and on the run. And video, so whether that's investing in a couple of video cameras and someone being trained up to upload video, whether that's paying someone on a regular basis to make video for you. If you're not investing in creating video, you're going to have some real challenges with content across your channels. It's one of the most important types of content. Finding clever ways to develop and disseminate that content will help with your resourcing. So with video, just, don't think it has to always be high production quality video of your performances or your events. It can also be quite raw video of talking to people behind the scenes, talking to audience members, talking to artists and artistic directors. There are different ways to produce video that creates content for you that isn't highly expensive and requires heaps of editing and approvals and things like that. Also, you can do things like, on YouTube, you can create playlists of video content that's relevant to what you're promoting but that's not yours. That helps the others because you're promoting it for them, but it also populates your channel. And as I said to Anna, using the same content across all the channels can really help. And get your team on board, get them enthused and enabled. and there's a number of ways that you can do that. Have them involved in the planning of social media, give them the tools, as I mentioned, and also make sure that they're well aware of your policy, which we'll come to in a second, because a lot of the time, the reason that people who are asked to post on social media don't is that they feel insecure. They feel nervous that they're going to say the wrong thing. And one other thing I would say is give them the freedom to try things and fail. So you're going to make a few mistakes on social media. Clearly, you want to be working within a policy and principles, but it's not the end of the world if you make a little bit of a mistake or you try something and it doesn't work. You just need to give your people the freedom to experiment a little bit. So just an example here of an artist, talking about their work. This is video that doesn't have to be hugely high production values. This is Rose is on the line, Rose Campbell from the New Zealand String Quartet. We worked with the New Zealand String Quartet a while back talking to the players about social media. They weren't that interested until we sat down with them and we showed them some of the statistics that came out of Facebook Insights, how many people had liked posts about them, what sort of demographics were on the Facebook page. Suddenly, that data made them extremely interested, and we've had them getting on board, and this is just an example of a really fun photo they took on their recent European tour that they were really keen to get up on social media, and it got a great response as well. So once we had shown them some tangible data and got them enabled, they were really into it. And a good place to go and see a good example of how this is working is the Australian Ballet's blog, Behind Ballet. And here's an example where they had a senior artist, one of their dancers, go around and photograph other dancers in their dressing rooms and interview them about what they had in their dressing room to remind them of home and things like that. So it was a great way to engage the actual artists themselves. Processes and policies. These are the sorts of things you need to have in place. A social media policy, which I'll just go to another slide here, looks something like this and contains these things. So I'm not going to, don't worry about writing them all down in a hurry because you're going to be able to get these off the slide later, but it's things like who has responsibility for content and updating, what are staff obligations, what are they allowed to say on their own social media channels, for example, and what aren't they allowed to say, what is the acceptable content subject matter for your channels, so everyone feels clear on this. When do you have to attribute copyright to photographers and things like that? What is going to be your frequency of posting? Where does it become too frequent and where does it become too infrequent? And how quickly will you respond? To what degree will you moderate? And what sort of disciplinary action would you take internally if someone didn't follow the policy? Mobile apps and dashboards make life easier. And we talked about those. And having a content calendar or posting plan can really help too. So what I mean by this, again, I'm going to flick through a couple of slides here. This is an example from the Building Your Business with Facebook Pages guide that Facebook produced of a conversational calendar. This works really well. And if you look down at the calendar on the left, you'll see that what they've decided is that each day of the week they will do a different type of post. So on Mondays, it's a ticket giveaway. On Tuesdays, it's a featured event. On Sunday, it's a concert calendar post and things like that. So doing that really helps. If you know that on a Wednesday you're featuring an interview with someone, or on a Thursday you're going to feature a link to an article, it just takes all that thinking out of it on a daily basis. And you can then turn this into a longer-term calendar, which you can just do in a spreadsheet. And it has the days of the week down the left. You note in there your internal activity, so any events that are happening or launches or new staff joining or anything that's happening you might want to talk about. External activity that's going to be something to talk about, so whether it's a Christmas coming up or whether it's a festival that you want to talk about, that type of thing. And then across the other, the right-hand columns, you can put what you're going to put in each of the different channels. And if you populate this you know, once a week or once every 2 weeks, you look at it in advance with your team. This really helps. Apologies, everyone, for my coughing. Identify the staff who will be involved, get them trained up, and have regular meetings. So you might just check in once a week for 10 minutes with everyone and to say, what are we going to talk about on social media next week? And it's also important to talk through what you're going to do if something goes wrong before it goes wrong. So that might be that there's a negative news story about you and all of a sudden it's all over your social media channels. It might be that you have an event cancellation and it's out of your control, but you get a lot of negative feedback on your social channels. Facebook have a number of guidelines on how to handle this sort of thing, for example, and so thinking about it before it actually happens is a really good use of your time. And when I say legacy management, if you're building some social channels for a short-term event, and you find that you build quite a strong community and then the event ends, what are you going to do with those communities after that? Are you going to keep talking to them? Are you going to hand them over to someone? Are you going to close down the page, that type of thing? So these are all the things that's good to think about during your strategy planning. This is an image from Sprout Social, which is one of the dashboards I talked about. It's fantastic. You can do a whole lot of pre-scheduled tweets. It's no replacement for engagement and talking to people on Twitter in real time, but it's great if you have to tweet about events on a regular basis. You can actually do them all in, sort of spend an hour in tweet mode, creating tweets and put them all in and pre-schedule them. Also great if you're trying to be a bit 24-hour and you actually need some sleep. The measuring and the tracking. We did quite a bit around measuring and tracking last webinar, so I won't go into a huge detail here. But what I just want to say is that, you know, that thing where you go into your social media analytics and it's all very interesting and, wow, you know, 15 people came from Bulgaria and all that sort of thing. Actually, what you should be looking at is the statistics and the demographics and the results that directly relate to your goals and objectives. So you're asking the questions and then you're finding the answers. So if you can create any dashboards, such as in Google Analytics and custom views, where it's easy for you to see the data that relates to your goals and objectives, that's going to help you. And it is important to compare your progress against relevant benchmarks, which is why we've set up the Optimizer program to get some relevant benchmarks. So I think we'll all find it a bit easier once we have those. I've done this table for you to have a look at afterwards. It's not comprehensive, it's not everything, but it's just giving you an example of how you can have the thing you want to measure down the left, which is related to your goal, and then some of the reports and the tools that you might use to do that. You know, once you've defined your goals, go into the analytics and see which of these reports will actually answer this question. It's actually a lot of fun to do that. It's really interesting to do that. It makes you look at the reports in a different way. Just some of my favourite reports. I really love these new reports in Facebook that are talking about this and the engaged users and the virality report, so that you can actually see which content's working and which isn't, and do more of the stuff that's working. And you know, YouTube's got some fantastic reports now. So this is just showing you on one individual video, not just the traffic, but where it's kind of come from, and you know what happened on that day when that traffic came through. Really, really interesting stuff to kind of determine how your activities, what it's resulting in. And then, of course, Google Analytics goals. Love it. Can tell you a lot about how your traffic is converting into different things from your social channels. And so how do you pull this together? It's a printed document which should contain these things. Your background, your context to all this, how your social media fits into everything else. The things we've talked about, your social media goals, your target audiences. It's a good idea to identify and note down all the likely challenges, which from my experience tend to be you're trying to do this in a short time frame, you don't have enough resources, you have some internal resistance, and you have challenges around your content and creating content, particularly video. So these are the likely challenges, and once you've actually articulated them, then you can actually go back and work out how you can address them. Key strategies and activity phases. So sometimes you're going to have some overall strategies that are across multiple channels. So these might be things like data acquisition, or that you want to build deeper engagement across the board. It doesn't matter through which channel. And then your activity phases, it might be that you break down your activity. So the first phase, if you're leading up to a festival, for example, your first activity phase might be just building the community, acquisition, and then you might go through a phase after that where you start to develop engagement, and then you go through another phase where you're really trying to convert people to attendance. So you might have those sort of phases depending on what you're doing. Then you go into your channel plan, where you take the individual channel, as I talked about before, and drill down into quite granular detail, and your cross-channel activity. And then it's how you're going to implement it, your action plan and your tracking. So it kind of starts, you know, like any strategy, starts high level, drills down into the detail till at the end you spit out an action plan that's really easy for you to follow on a daily basis. Here's some suggested 5 next steps. You might want to create a social media steering group, an internal group. It might be 2 or 3 of you. It might be 5 of you, depending on the size of your organisation. It might be some volunteers as well. And together clarify your goals and your target audiences for social media. Even if you're 3 years down the track, it's a good idea if you've never gone through this process to go back and review it. Assess your current social media channels across all those things, and then what should be dropped, kept, improved or added. You might want to find and adopt 3 new tools that can help your social media activity run more smoothly, and decide what it is you need to know and start tracking. And yeah, so just to review what we've talked about today, we've gone through how you might set goals and priorities, how you might select the platforms you use, your process of actually planning how each channel will operate, and how you might integrate across all the channels. Followed by, we looked at resourcing, the processes you need to put in place, how you might track, and what the documentation might look like. As you can see, this is a huge topic that, you know, tried to sort of squash down into 1 hour. There's some great resources which I've put here for you. Some of them are arts focused, some of them are New Zealand focused, and some of them are just general social media. You can get some great insights, and you just Google search any of the topics that I've talked about today and you'll be amazed what you find. So if you've got a particular interest. Yeah, so we've just got a few minutes left for questions. So just going to quickly go through and see.
We've got a question, or actually a comment from Aaron Alexander from Downstage, who was actually just picking up on what Anna said, and he's saying that no one will be able to Google search you if you only have a Facebook page and no website. Isn't that right?
No, Aaron, actually they'll be able to Google search you, and this is one of the things that's great about having multiple channels, is that you give yourself more option to come up in the search results. They'll just find you on your Facebook page, on your LinkedIn page, on YouTube, etc. So you will still pop up in the search results, it just won't be a website. Christine, can you recommend courses, places to get video and video editing skills? Not specifically off the top of my head, although I'm happy to discuss that with you later. Others may have ideas, but one thing you can do is like universities like Unitec, who have the film directing students and things who are always looking for projects to do. So that's a place to get some great skills and, in exchange for work experience.
My comment on that as well would be that I don't think, because it's more important to actually have video than not have video at all, the actual quality of the video that's posted is probably, although it will be great to have really fantastic quality every time, it's not actually that necessary. And I think just picking up on what people like Lindsay Long at the Sydney Opera House have said, that actually, even some of the more amateur stuff still gives a great sense of the art and kind of engages an audience at a greater level. So we can get a bit hung up on, you know, making sure that everything is really, really high quality when it comes to video. But I think just experimenting and giving things a go is probably a bit more important than making sure that it's really top notch. What would you agree, Vicky? Or
I totally agree. It does depend on the context and the subject matter, of course.
Yeah.
But you know, with things like Twitter, part of the thing of Twitter is that a lot of it's you know, you're posting observational stuff that you've just seen as you're walking down the street, and you've captured it with your iPhone. So you know, there's a lot of stuff you can do once you get your confidence up and you start trialing some stuff and seeing how and what sort of engagement you get. There's a lot of stuff you can do just on the fly with your iPhone. So, you know, you could probably split up the video content that you want to produce into absolute, you know, iPhone on the fly, doesn't matter what it looks like, and then a kind of more raw, basic, unedited stuff, and then your really top quality edited stuff. You could split it into kind of 3 groups.
There's another question from Lucy Bryant. She didn't actually catch the social media manager that you mentioned that cost US 8 to 10 a month that could be used to pre-plan content. Did you actually mention an example?
I use Sprout Social, so Sprout like Bean Sprout Social. I love that, but others love Hootsuite, which is hoot like an owl, suite as in a suite of products. Some people use TweetDeck for Twitter. So there's a number of, you know, you can just Google search social media dashboards and everyone's going to have their own preference, but a lot of people use Sprout and Hootsuite. I did see, Matt Allen, thank you for suggesting lynda.com for online video editing skills. Thank you for that. Yeah, are there any other questions at this point?
If not, I think we'll call it a day. That's been fantastic, Vicky. Vicky, thank you so much. We could probably extend this into a 2-hour webinar. There's so much to cover. We will be having another webinar in a month's time on the 30th of May at 10:30 again. We'd love you to join us. The topic will be capturing the mobile market, which is again, what everyone is talking about at the moment. It's mobile, mobile, mobile. So please do tune in for that one. It's been fantastic having your company today. We'd love to hear what you thought of the session, because we do pick up on your feedback and try and improve every time. So there's a short survey that will be sent to you afterwards, and if you can spare a couple of minutes, please jot down your thoughts. Otherwise, thank you again to Vicky, and we look forward to speaking with you again in a month's time.